I'm cleaning 135 now, 140 now, right? And then you start to appreciate the journey, and it's, I don't know, it's just a
No, I love that
where
answer.
I think a lot of people need to be at.
For sure, no, and I love that answer. And I think that,
Happy weekend, everybody, and welcome back to the Full Send Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Price, alongside Monroe Miller and Kenta Dooley. Boys, what's going on?
not much, dude. Just,
Yeah.
You know,
Same old.
same old, lifting weights.
Yeah, well, you guys are in for a super treat today, all right? So we get to talk about strength with two boys that are can move some weight over here, all right? And I actually want to start this one off with a little bit of a story, right? This is probably one of the first interactions I had with Kenta at the new building, and we were snatching. It was before the weightlifting segment on Saturday mornings, and Kenta's doing muscle snatches. Okay, now Brandon's over there struggling underneath like 175 pounds, going underneath it, you know, grunting, doing it whatever I can. And Kenta approaches the barbell at 205, right? So he's got a blue, he's got some yellows on there, and he just goes, smashes it into the hip, muscle snatches 205 pounds. It was one of the most ridiculous things that I've ever seen. Monroe, do you remember that moment?
That was also a very ridiculous moment that I saw. Yeah, Kenta's what we call dumb strong. He's not like, you know, he's strong, but there's some like things where you're just like, you shouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah.
That's not what normal strong people do.
Yeah,
So.
I wonder if
Cool.
Does anybody have that video?
I probably have it somewhere.
Yeah.
That's 205
that would
muscle
be
snatch.
That would be a cool thing to be able to link.
You 225
maybe
muscle
again.
snatch yet?
I think my best is 215.
215.
Yeah, I think my best muscle snatch is like 95 pounds. It's up there. Yeah.
Someone hit a 225 PR, right?
Yeah. This guy.
We did
That was
did that on Monday. That was
pretty impressive. That was sick.
that was awesome. And last time we talked about this too. Last time
Yeah.
you were on Kenta, we were talking about me Olympic lifting, kind of going through that. You were talking me through some coaching points and everything like that
Oh,
as
yeah.
well, right?
That's right.
So
Look at that full circle.
it has come full circle and everything like that, guys. But I wanted to share that first, and that if you guys ever want some hints, tips, tricks on really getting strong, these are your two guys to come talk to. I've also seen video footage, Monroe Miller pulling 550 pounds from a deadlift before, right? So some strong boys that we get to talk to here today. Guys, what's going on? Where do we want to start today?
So, I mean, I kind of wanted to start just with your journey, I guess, of building strength over the past few years. Like, when we met, you were strong, but you weren't, like you said this morning, you weren't powerful.
Mm-hmm.
You had benched 315. Your Olympic lifts weren't that great. But, yeah, so kind of like just now that you've, I guess, kind of built a good amount of strength, what is your, I guess, perception of the journey that you took to get there, and how do you use your journey of building strength to kind of coach other people?
Yeah, sorry. I gotta move this closer. Learning
All good.
experience
You
here.
can just hold it like I do if you want.
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, to keep it very simple, I think you were the one who actually started this or mentioned this to me, and it really didn't click till I really started weightlifting. But less is more, if that makes sense. You remember when I really started, I was bench pressing, doing accessories, doing strength, doing squats. I don't know. I think I was like overdoing it almost. Like I was lifting like 3 hours a day, 4 hours a day. I thought that more was the best, right? Like I felt like I was so far behind that I gotta do more. And then when I really started weightlifting, it was very tough because I felt like I wasn't doing the same amount of volume, if you would say, or same amount of exercise. But then all of a sudden, strength started to catch up, and I started to realize that it's the quality, right, of the lifts, not the quantity of the lifts, right? Now, volume plays a huge role in strength, but understanding that less is more, and rest days, to be honest with you. I actually rest on rest days, and I usually never do that. So I would say that was like my biggest like pivoting point, I guess you would say, would be I focus a lot more on the quality and not really the quantity, and focus on how am I recovering and resting. And I'm still trying to find that balance. It's very hard to come in here and lift an hour, maybe 2 hours a day, and everyone is doing more Metcons, and you're sitting there, you have to be like, okay, walk away before you're getting sucked in. So that was a big pivoting point for me. And then understanding blocks. So understanding like
periodization.
Yeah, correct, right? So which hopefully we get into a little bit later. But understanding that like the idea of focus for this specific block needs to be this and then we will move to the next block, and your focus should be this for the next block, and not trying to do everything on the first block, right? So that was huge, where like a lot of my weightlifting coach would tell me, hey, we're going to be focusing on strength and only strength, and then we're going to back off on strength and work on power. And understanding that those are actually completely two different movements is key, right? So
for sure. And like, we were just talking earlier today, and I think that, you know, that strength versus power thing, you've really kind of, I guess, taken hold of recently, like working with your new coach, John North. And you were saying, like, you're like, yeah, you know, I feel like I've never lifted like this before, just like super aggressive. And it's like, there's a lot of things like that where, you know, I remember when Scott was trying to get his back squat up years ago, and I was like, dude, you just gotta like, you gotta get nasty with the barbell. Like, you gotta wanna get in there and get nasty with it, you know. And like, same thing with the clean and jerks. It's really easy, you know, for you to just kind of go through the motions of the technique without really like giving it that oomph and giving it that heart behind it. And I think that like, what, I guess, I think that's really important, but what role do you think that has in building strength, and when do you think someone should add in the volume or add in the intensity, and when do you think that they should dial it back and just, you know, be happy with just working on practicing the lifts, you know?
Yeah, so I want to speak on I think you're talking about the velocity, when I was talking about like the intensity of each lift. So I want to talk about that first, and then we'll go into the other part. But not only did John North tell me this recently, but I guess his name is Travis Mash. If no one knows who he is, you need to like follow him. He's amazing at everything he does. But he really talks about like velocity is like the best big thing, right? And there's like sensors out there you can buy now where people from remote coaching could actually see, is his velocity staying the same every lift, or, you know, is today his velocity a lot less, right? But the key thing with velocity, I think it's with anything that you're looking at, right? When you're looking at numbers, and I don't know if you can see me through the camera, but like everything needs to be linear progression, right? But there's going to have these waves where you go up and you peak, and then you kind of tone it down, and then you want to progress back up, and then you peak a little bit higher than you did before and back down, right? And it's very important that it looks like that and not this straight line, or you'll hit a wall super quickly.
Like the stock market.
Exactly. 100%, right? But the key thing is the intensity also plays an effect. So like your intensity needs to look like that as well, right? So if you are going up to a barbell and you're like, I'm just going to give exactly the amount of energy, Willis style, to lift this weight. If you guys don't know who Willis is, he's also very strong, but he has an amazing way of just doing exactly what he needs to do to get under the bar.
He's lazy.
But it's important because the intensity, like if you really focus on increasing your intensity the next day and the next day and the next day and the next day, a month of focusing on your intensity levels also goes up, right? Which then will also reflect your power and your strength, right?
For sure.
So,
that makes total sense.
And I didn't really comprehend that till recently, and I think I was just doing the barbell and some light percentage work, and I was drenched in sweat. I went home, I think, pounding my face with food, and I was like, that is what intensity means. And it's very important that's a part of your training.
Intensity can wreck you too. Like, and 100%. I think that like that's what, like, you know, when we talk about, at least with CrossFit Metcons, you know, you can do 7 workouts a week if you're just kind of like cruising through them. But you do 1 workout a day and you kill yourself to try and go as fast as you can, like, you're going to be sore.
It's a big difference, man.
Yeah, it's a big difference in you know, the result of your training too. So, you know, and I think I see that a lot. You know, people are like, oh, what do I do to get stronger? You know, how do I get stronger? And like, they'll be doing back squats and they just kind of unrack the bar, just like it's just sitting on their back. Like they just got like Harper on their shoulders or something. You know, it's like, grab the bar, squeeze it. Like you got to like pull, like get yourself fired up about it, you know?
And that's why weightlifting is like an amazing journey for a lot of people. And a lot of my current clients, you know, not a lot of them, but a very small group of us, like there's a lot of life experiences that the barbell teaches. And I think that's an amazing kind of like analogy, I guess you can say. But the barbell is going to weigh the same tomorrow, the next day, day after, and probably for another 5 more years, right? Or forever. It's not changing. It's 45 pounds. But, you know, depending on how you get under the bar is going to change every day, right? So if you go under the bar, just my day sucks, I'm just gonna have a bad attitude today, that lift is going to also be bad, right? But if you can wake up every morning and have a smile on your face, you're like, I'm going to attack today's day, I'm going to give it everything you got. But if you take that and transition that into your lifting as well, again, you're going to improve just like your livelihood improves, right? So weightlifting is just an amazing sport as it is, and I think that's why, like, even CrossFit, like, weightlifting is a huge part of CrossFit just because of some of those skills that you create.
For sure. And I like that you bring up CrossFit. So
have to. I started with CrossFit.
Have to. So how do you balance, because we hear this a lot, where, and I think it's because they see people lifting heavy weights and they see that as fitness, and they're like, well, I need to improve my fitness, so I obviously need to get stronger. So what would you tell someone who's like primarily a CrossFit athlete and they're here just 3 to 5 days a week, they're trying to get healthy and in shape, but they have that, I want to get stronger because I want to be able to do the workouts RX and that kind of thing. Where would you kind of start with saying, hey, you're on a 3 times a week membership, this isn't your life, I'm not going to put you on a 10-week back squat cycle? Where would you say is like easy return on investment for them to say, hey, I want to get stronger, I'm doing CrossFit a few times, what can they add in to help themselves get stronger?
So that's a very good question. Didn't think you were going to go there. Other than nutrition, I think nutrition is key, right? So one,
See where he goes?
I'm going to say that that's something. I'm going to be
here.
honest with everyone that's watching this and hearing this. I struggle with that. However, majority of the time I do eat quality food. I also want to splurge myself, maybe a little bit too much, but I think other than nutrition has to be key. Like, you can't be doing anything else if nutrition is not even in your vocabulary. So other than nutrition, the intensity in the right lifts or the right movements that you're trying to improve on, as well as how often are you doing accessories, right? So for an example, a person who's coming in 3 times a week, right? Let's just say, start with 3 times a week. I'm just going to say Carly, right? Just because that's someone that I visually know in front of me, right? Let's say she comes to me and she goes, hey, I want to improve my back squat, right? I was like, perfect. And you're still a CrossFitter, which is totally fine. We need to shift your intensity away from maybe the movements that really doesn't matter at the moment and shift a little bit more intensity in the movements that we need to improve on, right? Just like you said, I think intensity also has a limit. And I think that's key to people who need to realize. You can't give 110% in your Metcons, your warm-ups, your 3rd Metcon, your 4th Metcon, and then try to improve your squats. Like, something is going to...
I think that's the same thing with, like, life, man.
Yeah.
Like, the more things that you're going to take on, like, the less you're going to be good at, like, any one thing or anything like that, right?
Yeah,
I love that kind of thing.
Exactly. So, like, if you're coming in with a goal, let's say my goal is to improve on back squat, and you want to do a Metcon, and the Metcon is burpees, double unders, and chest to bar pull-ups, right? Maybe you tone down and maybe not win that Metcon, and maybe just work on, hey, I want to work on going unbroken on double unders and just pacing my pull-ups, right? Perfect. Your intensity is to just move well on the double unders and work on technique work on your pull-ups. And then afterwards, you're going to spend the majority of your intensity working on your squat, right? Like, that's where I think people are having a very difficult time comprehending, is that you can't do everything at once. You need to find what you need to work on and give more time and effort into that, right?
And you're not ditching everything else.
No,
you're just
of course not.
biasing your strength a little bit more
Correct.
than your conditioning.
Correct.
And I love, like, for everyone that's watching, I love that the first thing you said was nutrition when I asked, hey, how do you build strength, right? Because I think a lot of people get into CrossFit to lose weight, get in shape, get healthy. They start to cut their calories, increase their activity, and then they're like, oh, I need to get stronger so that I can do CrossFit better. And they're keeping their calories the same and then adding more strength training. It's like, you can't gain strength in a calorie deficit. So it's like, if you're not eating enough to sustain what you're doing in class, you're certainly not going to build a whole lot of strength on top of that. So it's like, when we talk to people about nutrition, it's like, well, what's your goal? Are you, you can't say, I talked about this with Morgan. She's like, oh, I want to lose, 5 pounds or whatever. I'm like, okay, well, clean up your nutrition. She's like, well, but I want to get stronger. I'm like, well, then you should definitely eat. You need to eat, know?
And it's just like, I guess the analogy that I like, I'm a visual person. So for you guys who are visual, hopefully this helped. You need to understand what is food to you, right? Is it a fuel, right? Or is it a savory thing, right? Majority of the time, if you're looking to benefit, or if you're looking to improve in CrossFit or baseball or football or weightlifting, right, and that's your sport, you need to look at food as fuel, and that means you need to eat the food that is going to make you perform the best. Right. Now, going into that, right, it's very, very, very important to make sure that you are eating enough. And I bet a lot of people out there, if you actually took the amount of energy output that you're probably doing, including your work and including your stress level and including all your lift, and then actually look at the numbers of what you're eating, you're probably not eating enough.
Right.
That's probably what the problem is.
Right. Yeah, and people, struggle with that. Yeah. So, okay, so there is a lot of skill. So when we talk about strength, I think strength is a weird thing to kind of say because there's a bunch of different ways that you can be strong. You can have really strong back squat, deadlift, shoulder press, but not be able to clean and jerk. And would you consider that a strong person, right? Strong in a different way. So I think in a CrossFit gym, a lot of people want to improve their snatch, clean, and jerk. But the problem with that is there's a lot of skill acquisition that comes.
Yep.
So when you were talking earlier about choosing your exercises to focus on, when someone is still in the beginning stages of figuring out how to snatch, clean, and jerk and learning their technique, they're not going to be able to lift maximal weights to where snatches at 80% is going to be challenging from a strength perspective. It's going to be more, practicing the technique. So how do you, I guess, think about training people so that they don't feel like they're not doing anything by just doing empty barbell work? I have people where they don't move well, or they move okay with the light weights, but then as soon as they put 55 on it, it just looks terrible, and they're moving back down to the bar with little plates on it, and it's screwing up the pull off the ground, and they're not, it's where do you say, hey, it's not time for us to go full on in practicing maxing out your snatch all the time, dial back the positions and focus. How can you build strength without, I guess, just hammering top end snatch and clean and jerk?
Yeah, so this kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier, the difference between strength and power, right? It's important that when you're doing a strength, I guess, cycle or a strength block, right, that you're really focusing on the big compound movements, right? So let's look at it from a weightlifting perspective, right? If you are looking to get stronger, back squat is going to be probably one of the biggest things in your cleans. Front squats, right? Pulling from the floor, whether that's snatch grip or deadlift, or clean grip, right? So snatch, deadlift, or clean deadlift. Those are your very big strength exercises. You could make someone feel like they're doing the work they need to be doing by really making sure the volume for those lifts are high, and then you tailor down their accessory to work on some of the cleans and snatch, right? So they're already kind of pre-exhausted going into a clean and jerk or a snatch. Now, when you have a successful strength cycle, you start to transition the deadlift, right, or the clean deadlift or the snatch deadlift and these big squats into these big front squats, and then you tailor them to more of a skill, and then you prioritize more of your intensity into your cleans and snatch, right? So you're going from a strength cycle, building on strength, into then moving faster and moving with more intent with the empty or a barbell, right? So the key thing here is people need to, and if this is direct, people need to swallow their pride a little bit.
I think that's really, that's really key, though, man.
Swallow their pride a little bit and see that maybe your form, right? Maybe your technique, maybe your squat, maybe these these common movements are not moving the way they need to be, and that's why your clean and jerk and snatches are not where they need to be, right? So a good one of my coaches actually just recently told me this. I'm man, I've snatched 275 freedom units, 275 as my best, and I don't think I've hit that I think I hit that twice. Once here and once at my other gym. And then I'm kind of like hovering at this 265 to 255 range now, right? And I'm sitting here arguing to myself, man, my strength feels like it's going down. My strength feels going down. But then my back squat's going up 40%, right? My clean and jerk is going up tremendously. But you can't have, like, the more you understand how your body moves, you can't move big, heavy weights at a specific speed and then expect you to almost move like this under a barbell in a snatch. Like, something needs to give, and you need to understand that your goal is to build strength, and then your goal is to move fast later, right? And my strength has definitely not gone down because I'm lifting 255 or snatching 265, even though, like, it's not where I want to be, my maximum output in my snatch. Doesn't mean that your strength is going down, right? It's just mean that there's things that you need to prioritize now, and then that will come back later. So I think people look at strength completely different than they need to be, right? And power completely different. Just because you're not lifting at an optimal amount of weight doesn't mean your strength has gone down. You need to look at, like, overall, like, has my deadlift, my squat, my cleans, my bench, have all that gone up, right? Now, if everything is going down, then, like, that's clear.
Then we got problems.
But not everything is going to go up the way, you know, people intended, right? And that's that little, like, up and down, like the stock market that we talk about. Right now the stock market is down, so maybe it's not a good analogy, but, like, your snatch might be at this peak, right, one day, and your clean might be slowly coming down, right? Like, they all don't just come down and up together, right? So you really have to figure out what your main goal is, and if it is to become a weightlifter, you need to spend time under the barbell and building some strength first, making sure your rack position, like you said, for me, my rack position or my lower back or things that need to be kind of prioritized, and then move away from that, and then just move the barbell for a couple of months and then come back.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Let's take a quick break. If you are watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button if you're enjoying it. When we come back, we'll talk about your perception of strength and, you know, how that's changed over time. We can also get into block periodization and everything at the end. Cool?
Cool.
Awesome.
Dope.
And we're back. All right, guys. So we're going to be going over periodization. We're going over Kenta's got another theory that we're going to talk about in strength. Monroe, where do you want to go?
So my thing was, like, more like your perception of strength. So I think that, like, for newer lifters, they see you coming in and snatching 225, and they're like, "Oh my God, that's, like, my heaviest deadlift. Like, that's impressive." And you're, like, having a bad day over in the corner because you can't snatch more than 225. And for you, that's not a good day because your perception of, I guess, your success with strength is, like, kind of skewed because you're so strong now. You know, I see the same thing with fitness. So it's like, for people who are watching who maybe are not as strong as they want to be, or, you know, who are working on that, like, how do you kind of, we say stay in your lane, you know, pay attention to yourself, but, like, kind of what, I guess, is how do you coach people through that perception of strength, and where it's, like, getting them to still be excited about their lighter lifts and them moving well, and, you know, because it's hard for some, like, Morgan will be, sometimes my wife, she'll hit a lift and she's just like, man, it's a big PR, and she's like, yeah, but it's only 125.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't care, that's more than you've ever lifted for. Like, that's
strength,
rad. Like,
strength
it's so
is also
cool.
like relative to you,
For
you
sure,
know. So,
yeah.
like, I mean, victory is victory, right? I mean, we talk about this a lot when you have this and you compare yourself. If I'm gonna compare my 225 snatch to your 275 snatch, I'm never gonna be happy with that, right? Perception. That's interesting. You bring that up.
And so let's talk about you and your perception of, like, your perception of your strength has now increased, and, like, as soon as you hit that milestone number, it's just kind of, like, behind you, and you're like, we talked about this last time. It's like, oh, it's over my head. All that work is done, and it's just like. Then you look at the bar and you're like, it's not that heavy. I've done that before. You know, it's like...
And it changes,
So, what about you?
So that's a very loaded question, but I love it. So I think goal setting is huge, right? So one, and you kind of hit the nail on the head there. My strength is relative to my living, right?
Yep.
So how much I weigh, right? How much am I sleeping? How much am I eating, right? How much effort am I putting into my training to get the results that I want, right? Most people don't actually understand that they think that strength comes very naturally or very easy. For example, like your wife, right? Like she was talking about how she hits like 125, right? 125, and she is like, she hits it, but she's like, but it's only 125.
Right. She's
But
like not stoked about it, but I am.
But if she created a goal and a mindset, right, that this is the goal that I want to hit first, and then I want to focus on the next thing, and you don't look at the I guess the end results, but you look at how the journey works, you start to understand and start to love the process, right?
Sure.
So I don't look at my lift as like, hey, I want to finish off my career lifting 400 pounds, right? On the clean, right? That would be amazing, but that's not what I wake up every moment or every day focusing on, right?
And if you do, you're gonna kill yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Because then you're setting yourself up for failure. Because if you don't snatch or clean anywhere close to what your goal was, like your future goal, like you're not like, is it really like, what's the point, right? But if you look at every day as like, hey, I'm going to be that 1% better. I'm going to look at, hey, I'm going to make sure that whatever lifts that I get programmed for me today, I'm going to hit it with my 100% effort, and next day I'm going to be that 1% better, right?
Sure.
And you start to understand that the small little progress, you take wins, and then all of a sudden you're in this field of like, oh my God, I'm cleaning, and your wife, I'm cleaning 135 now, 140 now, right? And then you start to appreciate the journey, and it's, I don't know, it's just a
No, I love
place
that
where
answer.
I think a lot of people need to be in.
For sure, no, and I love that answer. I guess I'd like your opinion on the opposite side, where, I think that some of the ladies in this gym have the opposite issue, where they've almost set the bar too low, to where, like for you and me, for example, like, is part of the reason that you're not snatching 300 pounds because I can only snatch 275, and so you see it as like, well, the person that snatches heaviest that I know in my direct friend group is at 275, and so you're like always competing with me, but it's like, I don't really care about it like you do anymore.
Yeah.
So it's like, you're like almost limiting your perception. Like if I was snatching 300 pounds and you're snatching 275, you'd be like, man, I'm just not there yet, and like it seems more, I guess, attainable. Like there's this glass ceiling, I think, with a lot of the ladies in our gym at least, where it's like, Pat was talking about this, we got a bunch of dudes that can snatch 225, like a lot.
Yeah.
But we don't have a lot of girls that can snatch over 150. And it's like, I don't think we have any. But that's like a comparable number for like guys and girls. So where do you see, like, how do you break through, I guess, that glass ceiling of your perception of what heavy is and what strong is? Like, that's what I struggle with, like, I think that 275 is too heavy for me. That's why I can't hit it. You know what I mean? Because it is. And I go up to 55 and my shoulders pull forward and whatever. Like, yeah, I may not be conditioned to snatch that weight, but my perception of it is that it's too
heavy.
much.
Yeah. I mean, that's another loaded question.
That's why you're on the podcast.
You guys, I
I
love
need the
taking a
answers.
break here, like, and giving Kenta all the tough questions to, like, answer. And you're doing wonderful right now, too. This is so insightful, and people are going to get so much information out of this, dude.
Yeah, so there's like, okay, so hopefully this has answered your question. If not, then we can continue going. But I think there's this fine line of setting a goal that it's obtainable, but then also setting a goal that's a little bit out of reach, right? What I tell my clients, I want not a weekly goal, but I want a goal that you can obtain in 3 months, 6 months, and then a year, right? So one, you're not just settling for something that you hit 3, because then there's another goal that you have to hit later, but you also create this mindset of this goal from the very beginning, right? So I'm gonna use Brandon as an example. 225 was his goal, right? He hit it. Now what's next, right? You don't actually create a goal of what's next until you probably hit 225. Am I wrong?
Yeah,
Exactly.
100%.
Okay, so now you hit a lift and you're like, okay, that felt really good. I want to shoot for 145 or 245, right? But then let's say, for an example, the next day you don't even come close. Now you feel defeated because that day you felt good, and now you created a goal and you can't match the environment of what that goal was. But if you kind of take a step back, so I'm like spinning here, right? And you go in and say, hey, my goal is to hit 225 in 3 months, 235 in 6 months, right? And then a year I want to hit 240, right? So you create this goal that's already been created at the very beginning of your year, right? You hit 225, you automatically know the next goal is 230, and your mindset's already engaged and you're ready to go, right? If I don't know if that makes sense.
No, and I think it's a great way to think about it. You know, like, because I think about 275 is like the top. And I'm like, I could never snatch 300 pounds. But I know that's a lie. It's like, we were talking about, like, hey, the clean and the jerk and the snatch, like, the way your hips extend and the way you use your legs, it's all kind of the same.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's just, your hands are in a different place. It's a different way to do it. And so it's like, you know, if I could have the bar in my hip with a snatch grip and think about it the same way I do a jerk, it's like I'm making it every time.
Yeah.
So it's not the weight, it's like the way I'm thinking about it. So I like that answer.
Yeah. So like, for example, right now you have a goal of 227 or 275 again, right?
Right.
Sorry, 227, 275 again, right?
Right.
And you hit it. What's next?
Exactly. And
Right.
then I'm like,
see? Right. And then if that day felt amazing, you're probably going to create a goal that maybe is a little bit more unattainable.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Versus like if you create these like small little process or progression, you hit 275, you're like, you know what? Perfect. On to the next goal, and I already had that in mind, and you're going to go for it. Even if it felt good or not, you have a next goal that is kind of in reach. Because when you set the goal at the very beginning, that emotional, that the endorphins or whatever you have, their hormones, right? It's not making decisions for you.
Right.
If that makes sense.
No.
And sometimes that gets carried away.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about periodization then. Okay. So when you're starting with someone and you're coaching them, we talk about their goals, right? We set some of these linear progression goals, right? I want to hit 275, then 285 in 3 months, and then 295 in 6 months. Talk to me about periodization.
Yeah, so...
Because this is something that is kind of like, I guess, different than the way that CrossFit would think about improving strength.
Yeah, but
like
I think
CrossFit is like, hey, let's improve all areas of our strength at once, and that doesn't mean we need to back squat 3 times a week, because I care if you can also, you know, be stable pressing 1 dumbbell overhead.
I do feel like, though, in a way you can
periodize CrossFit. Right, and
right?
And I think we try to do that. Like,
yeah.
That's what our programming here is. Like, we try to, you know, have some progression of the strength side of things, because I think that's kind of one thing that CrossFit was lacking. But talk to me about like traditional periodization and how that's different.
Yeah, so one of the biggest things about training, or strength training in any sport, in my honest opinion, is that you need to break it into blocks and have a focus on what the block is, right? I love the first block being a very technical phase, right, and a hypertrophy bodybuilding phase, right? You know that I love bodybuilding, but muscle.
Let's go. Let's go.
It's like, yeah.
Muscle
doesn't just because you have a lot of muscle doesn't automatically mean you have a lot of strength, right? So I want to make sure that's out there. However, muscle can turn into strength, right? You know, so what I like to do is, again, you kind of make the illusion that they're doing a lot of work with bodybuilding when they're really not, right? So at the very beginning of our block, right, which could be about 4 weeks, we focus on bodybuilding, hypertrophy. So they're getting the volume, they're getting, you know, kind of the I feel like I successfully have done stuff, right? And then you work on maybe very light barbell, making sure their clean positions are good, right? Their rack positions are good. How are their holds? How are their stability, etc. Boom. Then you move into a strength phase, which could be anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks, where you work on, let's build your pulls, let's build your legs, let's build your speed, right? In your squats, things that aren't in a sense like a traditional clean and jerk, right? So
snatch, pull plus snatch.
Snatch, pull
that
plus snatch.
So
right?
So
snatch, pull plus snatch. Clean, pull plus clean, right? You can probably add a little bit of like push presses, right? Some strict press, depending on the athlete. Some, you know,
add a front squat in between them.
Add a front, yeah. So like just things that you would think of just building strength, right? Now you have to understand during this phase that your clean and jerks and your snatches might not be where they want to be, and that's fine, because I think strength, right, builds specific fibers, right, as where power builds different fibers. So sometimes you might be a little bit more explosive when you're in the power phase, right, which Olympic weightlifting is very known for. And then in the strength phase, you might be moving a little bit slower, so you might not be getting under a barbell as best as you should. that's, as a coach, you need to make sure your athlete understands that.
Right.
Because if they don't understand that and understand that's the goal of that block, they might do things that they're not supposed to do, which can potentially ruin their overall strength.
Right, like just going in and just trying to hit a heavy weight.
Exactly, right? And then you transition to I would say, like your block 3, your final block would be more of a power block, where you would focus on your traditional clean and jerks, right? Your traditional snatches. You might work on some squats, but they're not heavy squats. They're speed squats, which are, transitions into your power phase pretty well. Maybe some box jumps, right? I love, and I've been doing a lot of research lately, I love the double bounce back squat and double bounce front squats, because when you in an Olympic weightlifting world, sometimes when you get under the barbell, you do need a double,
for sure,
right? So like, but the goal during power is not for them to have a 1 rep max back squat, but to mimic the clean and jerk as much as possible, right? But like, that's like the most important thing out of all of this, though, that you hear is that you need to understand the journey, right? So on block 1, you shouldn't be expecting heavy squats, right? Or a PR in the snatch. And then when you're snatching, you shouldn't be expecting a PR in the back squat. Do they happen? Yes, right? They're not expected, right?
That's not the focus.
Correct.
Right.
And that's where the intensity of understanding what am I supposed to put my intensity in this cycle and today is very key.
For sure. I love that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I think that kind of puts a bow on it.
Yeah, I like it, guys. Let's go around and do closing thoughts. Let me go first, because this is fresh in my mind right now, and I really liked what we talked about, strength being relative to you. There's a movie called For the Love of the Game with Kevin Costner where he's a pitcher. He sits on the mound, and he says something like, kill the mechanism. And basically what he does is he goes into his whole little world, right? He can't hear the crowd. He can't hear it. It's just him and the baseball. And when you're going to do your own lift, you should do that. Right? It's you in 125, and it's just you in 125, right? It's not Monroe lifting 275 pounds in his own snatch that's going to have any dependency on how I feel about my 225 snatch, right?
No.
Let everybody else go, be in your own lane, and look at the barbell and be like, okay, cool, this is my thing, 225. This is going to be awesome for me to be able to hit this and have a victory today.
For sure.
I want to kind of piggyback off that, because I did want to say something, and I completely lost my train of thought until you brought it up. I think it's important, though, when you are focusing on strength, you need to define strength to yourself, right? So strength could honestly be whatever you really want it to be, right? For me, strength might be lifting heavy weights, right? But strength for someone could be, hey, I am having a hard time coming to the gym every day, but that's going to be my focus. Sometimes saying no to certain things is a sign of strength. For sure. Right? So I like that you said that, right? Because strength is so dependent on, again, your goal and what you view strength. Don't look at someone and expect, what they're doing and how much they're lifting, that's what your strength needs to be, right? So I think that's very important to understand. So I really do appreciate you bringing that up, because I think that's key. Like you need to understand that, like, when you create these goals, right, and you focus on these goals and you stay on this path and you don't worry about what everyone else is doing around you, you start to create this bond of you accepting you as yourself, right? And if you can understand and do that first, your strength becomes so much better. Like, sorry, I know this is last thoughts, but the big thing here is, like, I think you brought this up. I started out thinking that I need to beat you, and that's what strength means to me, right? And believe it or not, I progressed very slowly. Right? Now my strength is not necessarily beating Monroe, but understanding that I have these goals and these visions, and I have to say no to certain things, and I need to say no to and do certain things, and spend more time eating and spend more time on that. Right? My strength has completely changed, right? And I've got significantly stronger. So I think if anything you can take away from this is you need to define what strength is to you first and be okay with that.
For sure. And
Monroe, close us out, dude.
Hey, once you have that, perception of what strength is, and you have your definition, you need to find yourself a coach. And you need to, get your butt in that squat rack and get to work. So that being said, after the Open, we're going to have a weightlifting program starting here at Verity. We'll have more information coming out about that soon. So if you're interested in the snatch, clean, and jerk, you enjoy that, you want to get stronger, we'll be coming out with more information about that soon. We're still trying to iron out the class times and everything. If you are listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please give us a 5-star review. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to my channel, hit the like button on the video. Kenta, thank you so much for coming out.
Of course, it's always a pleasure.
Yeah.
Love it.
Have a great day, guys. Talk to you soon.